Hello. Welcome to the 14th part of the Necromancer's evolutionary traits. A special thanks to my channel members for supporting me. And if you want to support, you can join my channel membership or Patreon for as low as $1. Thank you very much. Let's begin. At the beginning of this part, we see that Kidwell uses an energy attack. Diane says, "Watch out." A really big explosion happens. They say, "Master Kidwell." Andreas stabs him in the throat. Kidwell cough out blood. Monster is still moving and attacking Andreas. Diane asks him, "Are you all right?" He says, "Stay back." Andreas thinks, the host should be dead already, but it's still moving. Did the monster take over his body? Monster starts to eat Kidwell's body. Andreas grabs Diane and starts running. Andreas says to her, "Get away while I make an opening quickly." She says, "But." Andreas starts fighting the monster. Diane thinks, "I don't know who he is, but he saved my life. I can't just abandon him and run away. I need to do whatever I can to help. Take it slow and be as steady as possible. Condense the energy. Make it thinner and sharper." She creates an energy spear and says, "I did it." Andreas thinks, if only I could summon Nickel and Timer. I could easily beat it. Damn it. That stubborn girl. Why hasn't she run away yet? She really doesn't listen to anyone. She get ready and says, "Now." She attacks it, which reveals Mana Core. Andreas sees that and immediately goes toward it to attack. He thinks, if I can destroy it. Monster attacks him, and he barely blocks it. He thinks, that was close. I was too hasty. Monster is killing all the Kidwell's people. Diane thinks, it's attacking its own? Why? Andreas thinks, it's absorbing their mana? Andreas thinks, shit, this is bad. He feel mana around his body. He thinks, this is a shielding made of ice magic? On top of that, a sharpness up, even a haste too. He sees toward Diane and thinks, that girl. He's using all her remaining mana for these. Andreas says, don't push yourself any further. Just run. He thinks, my body is light. He starts to fight again. He thinks, there's no end to this. I have to find its core. Shit. Too shallow. Ivy cuts down the monster and says, who are you? Andreas thinks, shit. Of all people, it's Ivy. She says, if you don't answer me, I'll kill you and rip that mask off myself. He says, those black mages have planted a large explosive magic circle. If they are not destroyed immediately, the students will be harmed. She says, quit bluffing, you punk. A big explosion happens. He says, it will probably explode soon. He runs away and says, I'll leave it to you. Ivy gets Angie and says, I swear, I will definitely find you. Andreas removes the mask and thinks, that was close. If it's Ivy, I'm sure she can take care of it. After that, we see at Tenera Strait, a certain ancient castle nearby. There is a blue mermaid and bird laying in the magic circle. Jester is performing necromancy on them. He says, this is my private retreat, Salem. It's common manners to inform me before you visit. Salem says, you're the one with no manners. Jester, are you underestimating me? If you weren't, you wouldn't have done that. Jester says, I don't know what you're talking about. Salem says, trying to play dumb. Huh, aren't you tired of living so long? Want me to cremate you? Jester says, what? What do you want? Salem says, you know what I want. If you had insisted, it's a natural disaster, it ain't real trouble, you know? Lend me the diligent sloth for a week, and I'll let you off the hook this time. AF that we see Andreas is reading news. It says, Black Mage Kidwell defeated at the hands of Assistant Professor Ivy Clare. Big interview with the Empire's Investigation Bureau. Targeted terrorism against Academy students. The daughter of the Alvin House testified that she was saved by an unknown individual at the scene. Andreas thinks, with Tolman's suspension, Bact is now taking up the investigation personally. This has become a big deal. Looks like things will be noisy for a while. I'll have to keep a low profile. Ivy is watching him. Ivy says, look like you like the night faculty training ground a lot. Huh? I wonder why I had to come all the way here to find a mage. Come with me, you virgin mage. Andreas thinks, don't tell me. She found out? Ivy says, you know why I'm here, don't you? Andreas says, yes. Somewhat. She says, that makes things a lot easier. She thinks, that's awfully straightforward. Andrea says, with all due respect, I'm not ready to start a relationship with someone of the opposite sex yet. She says, I'll bloody kill you. She says, Diane told me about the demi-human duo who had killed the students. What happened to them? Andrea says, I don't know. As I told the investigation bureau, I managed to escape when they were distracted. I'm glad Diane didn't mention that they were after me. Ivy says, bullshit. You expect me to believe that story? He says, but it's the truth. Now, if you'll excuse me. She jumps toward him. Andrea's bring out his sword and block the attack. Ivy says, a scrawny mage like you managed to block me, an assistant professor of the night faculty? Andrea's thinks, all I did was block her sword. She says, yeah, that's fishy. Andrea's says, are you implying that I'm the one of the black mages, Professor Ivy? Vivian is listening everything. Vivian thinks, Andrea's is a black mage? Ivy says, it's only logical. Whenever there's a case involving the black mages, you act suspiciously. And in the Balleric case, you even took down the mage who trapped me. She thinks, his voice is different, but he's got the same body type. How did he do it? Andrea says, take it you're not convinced by what I've told the Bureau. She says, that's right. And one more thing. Ever since that midterm exam Vivian's changed. What did you do to her? He says, all I did was save her. She says, you did? Andrea says, yes. I only went inside the barrier and rescued her, that's all. Vivian thinks, I knew it. Andrea's was Mr. Fairy. Ivy says, quit bullshitting me. How can a failure like you waltz in and out of a black mage barrier freely? Vivian says, it's true. Andrea saved my life that day. Andrea says, Vivon? She starts to walk and says, I'll be watching you. Andrea's Cromwell? Andrea says to Vivian, thank you for helping me. Vivian says, don't worry about it, Mr. Fairy. Andrea's doesn't say anything. She thinks, that confirms it. The 14th part of the Necromancer's evolutionary traits ends here. If you want to see more, please subscribe and like. And if you want to support me financially, you can join my channel membership or Patreon only for $1. Patreon and Discord links are in the description if you want to support me. And a special thanks to all my Patreons for supporting me. Thanks for watching.